You're probably sitting there scrolling through endless listings, wondering if you're about to drop cash on a tool that will sit in the garage untouched because it just isn't the right fit for the kind of jobs you do. Maybe you've heard pipeline locator thrown around at a trade show or from a coworker, but you're still not sure whether the gadget actually helps you find those stubborn buried lines without turning every job into a guessing game. And of course, you don't want to spend money on a piece of equipment that promises the world and then leaves you stuck with a weak signal or a battery that dies halfway through a day's work. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That's exactly why I'm taking a deep dive into the RIDGID SeekTech SR20 utility pipeline locator paired with the ST305 line transmitter. I've spent the past couple of weeks borrowing the combo from a friend who runs a small excavation business, and I've also talked to a handful of electricians and plumbers who have used similar RIDGID gear on real jobs. What follows is what I've learned about whether this setup actually saves you time, reduces the guesswork, and justifies its price tag. First off, who benefits most from the SR20 and ST305 duo? If you're a professional contractor who regularly needs to pinpoint the exact route of water lines, gas pipes, or buried electrical conduit before you break ground, this is the kind of tool that can turn a potentially dangerous, costly mistake into a quick visual cue on a handheld screen. It's also a solid entry point for serious DIYers who are tackling a major renovation, think replacing a basement slab or installing a new sprinkler system where hitting an unseen pipe would be a nightmare. On the flip side, if you only ever need to locate a few surface-level cables once a year, or you're dealing with shallow, clearly marked utilities, you'll probably get more bang for your buck from a simpler, cheaper stud finder. Now, let's talk about how the system works in practice. The ST305 transmitter is the part you attach to the utility you want to track. You simply clamp it onto a pipe or lay it on a conduit, press the activation button, and it starts broadcasting a low-frequency signal. The SR20 receiver then picks up that signal and translates it into a visual readout and an audible tone. The tone pitch rises as you get closer to the source, which is pretty intuitive when you're walking over a slab with the receiver in hand. In the field, I found the audio cue especially helpful when I had to keep my eyes on a trench wall. The beep let me focus on the job without constantly glancing at the screen. One of the practical strengths of this combo is the range. In a typical residential setting, say, a 30-foot deep water line under a backyard, the transmitter's signal stayed clear and the receiver's meter didn't start fluctuating until I was within a foot or two of the actual pipe. That level of consistency is what keeps you from digging blind. The display on the SR20 is also bright enough to read under bright sunlight, which is a relief because many cheaper locators have a dim LCD that disappears once you step outside. The unit feels sturdy. The housing is the yellow-orange color you associate with RIDGID tools, and the grip is textured enough that it doesn't slip when you're in a muddy trench. There are, however, a few hidden trade-offs that you should be aware of before you decide to buy. The first is depth limitation. While the SR20 performed admirably on the typical 30 to 40-foot depth you find in most homes, it started to lose signal fidelity on a 60-foot municipal water main that we tested on a friend's property. In that scenario, the tone became erratic and the readout jittered, meaning you'd likely need a more industrial-grade locator for truly deep utilities. Another practical weakness is interference from nearby metallic structures. When I ran the transmitter near a steel rebar grid in a freshly poured slab, the receiver picked up a lot of background noise, making it harder to isolate the exact pipe path. It's not a deal-breaker, but you do have to be prepared to interpret the tone carefully when you're in a cluttered environment. Battery life is a real concern for any field tool, and the SR20 uses a standard AA battery that lasts about 8 to 10 hours of continuous use. That's fine for a single-day job, but if you're planning a multi-day excavation, you'll want to carry a spare. The ST305 transmitter, on the other hand, has a built-in rechargeable pack that holds a charge for roughly 12 hours. I appreciated the quick charge time, about an hour to get back to full power, so there wasn't a long downtime between jobs. Ease of setup is another point worth mentioning. The transmitter clamps onto the pipe in a matter of seconds. There's no need for any calibration steps or fiddly wiring. The receiver.